Welcome back to Spooky Scary Storytime. Tonight's episode deals with supernatural abilities, the abilities that we're not supposed to have, or the ones that we were told to forget. Because over the last few months, I've gotten story after story from listeners who swear that they remember flying as a child, that they remember breathing underwater, and we even have a story from a woman who claims that her boyfriend can actually teleport actively. There's also a story from someone who was in the GATE program as a child who swears that an entire section of her memory from childhood went missing. And the strangest part about all of these stories is that they all seem like different pieces to the same puzzle. And when you zoom out, it almost feels like these abilities come in categories. There's childhood abilities like flying or being able to breathe underwater. There's survival abilities like drowning and then surviving. There's anomaly abilities like teleportation or telekinesis. And then there's institutional anomalies like the kids in the GATE program who have strange memory gaps around childhood, or the kids in that program being marked. Stories about abilities like this come in so frequently that it makes me think that stories like this aren't just random experiences that a bunch of different people are having and chalking up to something else. It almost seems like they're echoes of something that humans used to be able to do and aren't supposed to remember how to do anymore. And look, I'm not saying that we are all superheroes or that we were all superheroes, but it is suspicious to me that especially children have memories of things that adults claim are impossible. I'm going to share with you a few stories submitted by listeners in this episode, but before I get into that, I just want to briefly touch on Project Stargate, which is a real declassified CIA program that studied telepathy, remote viewing, and declassified documents show that they used children pattern recognition and people who tested very highly on cognitive assessments. And I'm not saying that this is proof that the GATE program was a gateway into the CIA or a government experiment, but it does paint a very weird backdrop, doesn't it? A government agency literally spent decades and millions of dollars to figure out if some humans were superhuman and had abilities that nobody else thought possible. And according to their own documents, some experiments worked. Not all, not consistently, but enough to keep the funding rolling for 2 consistent decades. Keep that in mind while you're listening to these stories. We'll get right into it. Welcome back to Spooky Scary Storytime. Thank you so much for being here. A story from a woman who claims that when she was a child, she could breathe underwater. Now, stay with me. She said that when she was a kid, she used to love being in her aunt's pool. She could swim all the way to the bottom, all the way across, and she was able to breathe underwater with ease. And she knows that she was able to do it because she even remembers trying to teach her little cousin how to do it. And her cousin was never able to, but as she got older, she lost this ability, and she just chalked this memory up as like something related to childhood trauma. She said her childhood wasn't great, and she probably just invented this idea in her head as like a false memory to make herself feel better about her childhood. But even as an adult, she's always felt this very strong connection to water. And she said that part of it is that she feels like she was made wrong because she does have what she described as an invisible disability. She has flat feet and knock-knee legs. She's in pain every single day, but when she's in the water, she feels comfortable and at ease and like she's where she belongs. But she said this isn't that strange because a lot of people with her condition are told to swim as like a form of physical therapy. She never really thought about her ability as a child until she was 27. She was at a family gathering swimming in a pool, and one day it just happened. She took a breath underwater and she resurfaced, and she was in complete shock as all of these memories about breathing underwater came back to her, but she couldn't tell anyone, right? Because she was like, they're going to look at me like I'm insane. She said at the time she was seeing a chronic condition specialist who she kind of developed like a friendship with outside of just the therapy setting. And her therapist ended up telling her that basically she was interested in having her try some spiritual methods or Reiki energy healing. And this put her off because she was like, I'm not really a spiritual person. Like that's just not my lane, you know? That she's always been skeptical by nature, but when the doctor asks if she can try these methods on her, she's like, what do I have to lose? Because at that point she was in such chronic pain that she was barely able to move at all. The doctors told her that she was going to be bedridden by 30, and they kept putting her on all of these medications that didn't really seem to do anything for her. So her doctor starts doing what she calls reprocessing therapy, and she starts addressing what she described as repressed emotions and memories stored in the body to release trauma. That she was mixing metaphysical and spiritual methods with traditional medicine in a way that was unique to her condition. And one day the doctor just starts telling her about Atlantean people, and it sounded conspiracy adjacent as this woman describes it. I guess just the nature of the conversation led her to tell her doctor that she used to be able to breathe underwater when she was a child. And she really didn't expect the doctor to believe her, but the doctor actually surprises her because she says, I could too. And then she went on to proceed how she would do it without this woman ever telling her how she did it. And it was the exact same way. Said she didn't want to tell me how she does it because she doesn't want people using this to say that they know how to do it, but she is curious if there's other people like her out there because she is looking for a scientific explanation of this, and she's 33 now, and there's not a day that she takes walking or dancing for granted. Said, I've researched, I can't find anything. I just want to know if there's more of us out there. I'm not going to say anything, but I will be reading the comments. Let her know what you think.
This story deals with a possible timeline jump. It came from someone named Elizabeth, and she says, I drowned when I was 15, and I still remember every detail 15 years later. She says, I know how impossible that sounds, but I can't make sense of what happened to me. She said today she's 37 years old, but this happened when she was 15 in 2003, and she can still remember every detail vividly as if it happened yesterday. I thought she wrote this in a very eloquent way, and so I'm going to read you this story word for word as opposed to putting it in my own words because I want to make sure that I get every detail correct. This is what she said. Every summer, my dad would take my brother Derek and I to our grandparents' house, my dad's parents, to swim in their backyard. They had a pretty big in-ground pool that had been around as long as I can remember. Over the years, it became somewhat of a routine. Whenever school let out for summer vacation, Derek and I would spend a few weekends at their house to enjoy the summer and make use of their pool as much as we could. They had a curling slide that required a ladder, as it was roughly 12 feet tall, and a diving board near the deep end of the pool. To us, it was better than going to a water park because it was private, secluded, and fenced in. Pretty much a dream come true for any kid who loved to do a cannonball from a running start. I should preface this by saying Derek and I were, and are still, excellent swimmers. It was in that very pool I learned how to swim as a kid and kept improving the more time we spent there. The day in question was just like any other. Derek had just gotten out of the pool to dry off and resume playing Pokemon on his Game Boy. There were pool chairs and tables lined up on the side, and I distinctly remember Derek sitting on the far corner as I stepped up to the diving board. Before I jumped in, I remember looking at the sky and seeing storm clouds approaching. They were exceptionally dark in some areas, so I figured I'd take one more dive before it started to rain. I jumped in, hit the bottom of the pool, and remembered inhaling from impact, maybe a natural reaction at the time. I'm still not sure why I recall doing that. I wasn't an idiot when it came to swimming and never had any issues diving before. When I opened my eyes, I half expected to find myself coughing up water at the surface, but I didn't. I didn't see anything except darkness. Not just darkness, but pure, unfiltered black in every direction. I distinctly remember thinking, that's weird, are my eyes still closed? I reached out my hand but couldn't see it. I felt myself moving and even felt myself blinking at one point, but I still couldn't see anything, which in hindsight should have freaked me out. But it didn't. In fact, it was the calmest and most relaxed I'd ever felt in my life. It felt like I was floating, but there was no weight to my body, at least not that I remember. I could still feel the sensation of my arms and legs, but I didn't feel anything beneath me, and I accepted it without any fear or worry. I didn't feel any pain, I didn't feel an ounce of fear, but I remember thinking, or maybe even saying out loud, so, this is what death feels like? Feels kind of nice if it is. I can't remember the last time I ever felt so calm. It was half a joke, half acceptance. So the sensation of floating without a care in the world lasted for what only felt like a few minutes. Long enough to take in every sensation and notice how odd it was that I couldn't see any part of myself, no matter how many times I put my hands out in front of me. Suddenly, all the blackness started flickering pink and red in the distance. It was subtle at first, but then that's all I could see, a reddish pink glow, and that's when my eyes actually started to hurt. All I can say about what happened next is that I felt like all the pain and fear I should have been feeling hit me all at once. My throat hurt, my stomach hurt, my head hurt, my eyes hurt, and I could feel my body laying on a rough, hard surface. I opened my eyes, remembering how odd it was that I suddenly could. When I did, I didn't see black anymore. I saw bright blue in almost every direction, which I eventually realized was the sky directly above me. There were no clouds, no storm approaching, nothing. It was a normal, regular, sunny summer day, except I wasn't in the pool anymore, and Derek wasn't in the chair with his Game Boy. I coughed up some water, but not nearly as much as I expected, and aside from that, the rest of me was completely dry. I was lying on the side of the pool, maybe an arm's length away. I started wondering how on earth I'd managed to get myself out of the water, not to mention how long I'd been lying there in the sun. Suddenly, I heard the screen door behind me open. It was Derek, looking half concerned and half relieved. From what I recall in the haze of confusion, Derek had gone to find an adult, and they eventually came out only to find me very much alive and not in need of medical assistance. Derek asked if I was okay, and I reassured him I was. Physically, I felt fine, as if I'd only swallowed a mouthful of pool water. I'm not going to lie, a small part of me was pissed off for going from such an extreme sense of calm to absolute disorientation and confusion within a matter of minutes. When I asked my brother what happened, he seemed just as confused as I was. In a split second, Derek went from looking as concerned as anyone should be after watching their sibling drown to confused and annoyed that I was even asking questions. Now, if it wasn't weird already, here's where it gets very strange. She says, the fact that there were no clouds in the sky, let alone the dark impending storm clouds I distinctly remember, was already weird enough to make me uneasy. I don't know how else to explain it, but it almost felt like I wasn't supposed to be there. It felt off, but only in subtle ways at first. It was only after I realized the time on the clock was different from the last time I saw it that I started to feel extremely uneasy. I remember taking the final dive in the late afternoon around 4 or 5 p.m. However, now the clock showed just past 11:30 a.m. I felt like I was either going crazy or had had one of the most vivid visceral dreams of my entire life. And over the years, I tried to ignore it, but there hadn't been a year of my life since that day where I haven't thought about it. It was impossible to explain that phenomenon without sounding insane. That is, until I heard one of your stories about a girl who went on a trip and suddenly remembered everyone around her disappearing. Her account of looking everywhere for her friends, only to find them back at their cabin, acting as if she hadn't been missing for an entire day, compelled me not only to share this story with you, but also start piecing together some of the missing parts on my own. At that time, I wasn't aware of the multiverse theory, time jumps, glitches in the matrix, or anything of the sort. But now that I've heard more stories of people having similar experiences, I can't help but question whether that period of floating in darkness was me slipping into the nearest timeline. Not everything matches the original, of course, but it's close enough not to make me feel like an outsider in my own life story. When I heard about the story of that girl on that trip, it made every memory of that day come flooding back. I decided right then and there to call my brother and ask him directly if he ever remembered me drowning when we were teenagers at Grandma's pool. I'd already warned him beforehand that what I was about to ask him was going to sound insane, but to please go with me on this. He paused for a moment on the phone and said, no, I think I'd remember something as traumatic as my sister drowning right in front of me. But the thing is, in that previous timeline, he did watch me drown. He was the only other person in the area when it happened. It's a detail I will never forget as long as I live. I can't remember which adults were in the house when it happened, but there was definitely some kind of supervision. The adults, like my grandparents, would usually be in the living room whenever we swam, only occasionally coming outside to check if we needed anything. The majority of the pool was visible from there. A large sliding glass door took up more than half the wall, so making sure we were okay usually didn't require more than a quick glance. Even when the glass door was closed, the pool was close enough to hear anyone outside. I know full well that none of the adults in that house would have left Derek and I unsupervised, no matter how much trust they had in us or how skilled we were at swimming. Which begs the question, why was nobody else except Derek there before I jumped off the diving board? Maybe they were inside and I just couldn't see them. Or maybe the one time they trusted us to be fine was the one time everything went horribly wrong. My brother was slightly skeptical at first when I told him, but he started believing me more and more with every new detail I shared. I told him what game he'd been playing, the color of his Game Boy, the color of his swimming trunks, everything I recalled, looking only moments before jumping into the pool checked out. He said he remembers the game, the Game Boy, even the shorts, but doesn't remember me drowning. When I told him about hearing your story about the girl on the trip, he admitted it seemed possible. I may have jumped timelines. He seemed pretty deep in thought as he processed it. I told him, you do realize that if I drown in that timeline and you watch it happen, it means you're an only child somewhere, right? That seemed to really hit him. My brother and I are extremely close, only 17 months apart, and always have been. He said the thought of watching me drown would have undoubtedly left him scarred and traumatized, enough for it to, quote, likely do something stupid later on just to escape all the guilt. Which, of course, breaks my heart. It scares me to think that my brother might have done that, wherever that timeline exists. But between all the constant migraines he gets on the right side of his head and the Mandela effects we both share, it wouldn't surprise me if he left that timeline of his own accord only to wind up in this one with me. It's a reach, of course, but it was an interesting theory to discuss as we dove headfirst into this crazy rabbit hole of uncertainty. She ended her email by saying, I apologize if this was long-winded, and I'm aware that this might sound completely insane, but maybe, much like how the story of the girl on the trip helped me put the story into words, this will help someone else who's experienced something similar. Thanks for reading. I'll be honest, I'm not sure what to make of this story, but I do find it totally interesting. So Elizabeth, thank you so much for sharing this. I hope there's someone out there who can shed some light or a similar experience. What I'm noticing about stories like this is there are so many people that are starting to come forward and talk about what they believe to be a glitch in the matrix or a slip in a timeline. And as we're learning more about the time-space continuum and them firing up the CERN particle accelerator, it just begs the question, is it possible for us to slip into other timelines, especially when it comes to avoiding death?
If you're an 80s, 90s, early 2000s baby and you were in the GATE program, that's Gifted and Talented Education Program, I need to hear about your experience because I went down the rabbit hole last night after I did a story on liminal spaces and back rooms, and a bunch of people were commenting like, I wonder if this is related to the GATE program, which some people think was a government program ran by the CIA to find children with telepathic or psychic abilities. So naturally I searched my email and I have 3 stories about the GATE program. But the thing is, I was in the GATE program and I didn't even remember being in the GATE program until I read these comments. A lot of the people in the comments of the criteria were strange. Like a lot of the children had hazel eyes. I have hazel eyes. I know they look dark in this lighting, but legally on my driver's license, it says I have hazel eyes. Another thing was that a lot of the kids in this program had near-death drowning experiences. I've had 2 of those, both before the age of 8. The third thing is that after this experience, a lot of these kids that were in this program have never broken a bone. Guess who else hasn't? And a lot of these kids have no memory of being in this program. I also didn't until I was reading these comments, and I was like, wait, that sounds familiar. So I called my mom today. I was like, hey, do you remember the GATE program? I was in it, right? Or am I just making that up in my head? She's like, oh yeah, you were in that. I was like, what was it? She's like, I don't remember. I just remember somebody calling the house and saying that you had really good test scores and they were asking about your interests. And so I signed you up. I was like, okay, where'd you take me? She's like, I don't know. I just remember dropping you off. And the thing is, all I remember about this program is that it wasn't at my school. It was somewhere else. I remember one other girl that I knew that was in the class, and she was from the Philippines and she had just moved to the US with her family. She was so smart, but she spoke very broken English. I remember learning rudimentary Morse code. A lot of people have said that they remember learning Russian. I don't remember that at all. And I remember doing sound experiments where they would put headphones on and they would play certain tones. When I asked my mom about it, she says that she also remembers us doing a lot of water exercises, but I have no recollection of that. And that's the other crazy thing about this is so many people that were in this program actually have no memory of it until it's brought up by somebody else. And this actually doesn't make any sense to me because I remember a lot of my childhood. I had a really good childhood. I remember being in Girl Scouts. I remember being on the swim team every summer. I remember playing with my neighbor. I remember my teachers and my classmates' names from kindergarten onward. I remember my science fair experiments. I remember sleepovers at the YMCA. Why don't I remember being in this program? That said, I'm going to share an email submission I got about the GATE program that came back in February. This person wants to be anonymous, but she is a woman. She said in 2014, she was about to turn 9. She had just moved to the US and she was invited to join the GATE program. She remembers being in a room with a computer and a long table, and there was a man in the room with her that seemed to study her. She put on a pair of headphones. Doesn't have any recollection of what they actually did with the headphones, but then her mom's aunt moves in with them. And the thing is, she doesn't even remember her aunt living with them. She knows she was there, but she can't even remember her face. This was going on at the same time as the GATE program. She's possibly changing schools. She applies to a charter school, but they didn't do the GATE program there. She doesn't get in because they did a raffle. After she finds out she doesn't get in, a strange man calls the house and says that she was accepted. Thing is, after that, they never found out who that man was. There was no record of him being part of the school, but I mean, she was in, and she thinks that he was just trying to get her away from this program. She said, ever since the program, my imagination has improved significantly, but I never felt like a kid again. And then you can see what she experienced. She also says that she has never broken a bone. Apparently, there's a girl on TikTok who has her workbooks from this program. So I'm about to go even further into this rabbit hole. But yeah, I need to know more from more people who are in this program because why don't I remember anything?
So while we're on the topic of the GATE program, I felt like it was important to include this email that I got from someone named John, who shared his experience being in the GATE program after seeing the video that I just played for you. I'm going to read you his email because I feel like you need to hear all of the details, and I apologize, I don't have a video component to go along with this one because I'm recording this one on the fly to include in this episode. But this is from John, and he says, "Hi, Ashley, this is a lot. My discovery of being in the GATE program and everything that happened was very organic, but I'll do my best to explain it all. My wife of 20 years has always been interested in conspiracy theories and such. 99% of the time, the conspiracy isn't that far-fetched, as we have learned. One day, her and I were talking about our school experience when we were kids. We were discussing an event that happened to me in kindergarten when I told her I would get pulled out of class like I used to get pulled out for hearing tests. She stopped and said, 'What hearing tests?' I told her, the routine hearing tests we would have to take, and she said, 'Stop, I never took hearing tests. What else do you remember?' I explained that we would get pulled out of class, have a juice, do puzzles, hearing tests, IQ tests, and other quizzes. We learned Morse code, guess shapes, and learned patterns and sequences. She asked me if I was ever in an advanced class, and I didn't know, so we called my mom. My mother, who is 78 years old, says, 'Oh, you were in the Gifted and Talented program, the GATE program. You could read at 2 years old and test it off the charts for your IQ.' My wife about fell over. I still had no idea what she was talking about until she explained it to me. I remember a lot of it, so it's probably easier to ask about anything specific than for me to ramble. But here is where it gets interesting. I went to college and graduated with a degree in criminal justice. I got recruited out of college for the Secret Service in 2001. I went through the hiring phase and got hired. The entire hiring class was then canceled and basically fired because there were no minorities in the hiring class, and they got sued by a candidate who did not pass. I then got a job at a local police department. I was there for 15 years where I worked patrol, and then I got promoted to detective and worked in the sex crimes and violent crimes unit. I ended my career in the human trafficking task force. I served on dozens of tactical task force, served hundreds of high-risk warrants, and worked with many agencies. Not before I was sent over to a dozen training courses for firearms and tactical shooting. On top of the hundreds of hours of interview and interrogation schools I was sent to.
from everyone from the FBI, DEA, Secret Service, Homeland Security, ATF, and interrogation schools from HIDTA and the John Reed School. I was also on the Dignitary Protection Squad working with the Secret Service when presidents and high profiles came to town. In 2015, I was recruited by the NSA and flown out to Fort Meade, Maryland multiple times for interviews for an interrogator job. The job would have been in conjunction with the CIA and working overseas interrogating terrorists. This was the same time Operation Greystone was operating. I ended up not taking the job and left the career altogether, going to the private sector where I now sell real estate and own a small business. In 2016, I requested my file from the feds through the FOIA, which is the Freedom of Information Act. I received it months later. Half of it was redacted with no explanation. I don't know if I was a project from day one that just continued on.
Friend can teleport and has proven it to me multiple times. I thought I've heard it all. If you're new here, Spooky Scary Storytime is the series where I share allegedly true, creepy, crazy, most unbelievable things that have ever happened to somebody, okay? And so, like I said, I thought I've heard it all. So when I get this email and this lady says that her boyfriend can teleport, I'm like, So I read her email and what? So first of all, she said her boyfriend is 50 years old. They've been dating for 3 years. He's incredibly sweet. He's incredibly kind. And he's also huge. And this is important later. He's 6'5", about 260 pounds. Still dating. She's like, should I be scared? So here are the facts of the case. Still with him, okay? And she's like, should I be scared? But I'm gonna give you the facts of the case. So she says that they met like 3.5 years ago. She had just gotten out of a long-term relationship where she broke up with her fiance. And like I said, this guy was super nice. They started dating and she needed a place because she was moving out of her fiance's old place. And so he's like, well, why don't you stay with me for a little bit while you're getting on your feet? And she's like, perfect. It's a temporary setup and this man is like a safe space to her. So one day she's unpacking all of her stuff in his house. He's at work. It's like 6 p.m. And the way that their apartment is set up is important to know. So they live on the second floor and she said that in order to get into the apartment, you walk up a flight of stairs that enters into the living room. There's no other way to get in and out of this place. So living room, then kitchen, then 3 bedrooms. 1-floor apartment on the second floor of this building, okay? There's no way to get anywhere in the apartment without coming through that living room door. So she's unpacking stuff. She's got the TV on. She texts him to say that she misses him and she hopes he'll be home soon. And he texts her, I miss you too. I can be home whenever. And she's like, oh, haha, like, please hurry home. And he's like, no, one thing that you don't know about me is I can appear as you wish. She's flirting back. You know, she's like, oh, if you can appear as I wish, then I wish that you're here now. Like, please come in. And he says, okay, go open any window and I'll be there shortly. And she's like, okay, so she goes to the farthest bedroom, opens a window a little bit and goes back in the living room. A minute later, he comes walking out of that bedroom and she's like, I don't know how he got in because it's on the second floor. She's like, what, did you just have a ladder outside or something? And he's like, no, I wasn't kidding about I can come and go as I please. She brushes past him. She goes in the bedroom, looks out the window for a ladder or something. There's no ladder. There's nowhere in the apartment that he could have put a ladder. So she's looking at him and she's like, no, really, how'd you do that? And he's like, I'm not kidding. Like, I can come and go as I please. Presses him for answers, but he is persistent in the assumption that he can just come and go as he pleases and he will not give her any other explanation. So she finally just laughs it off, I guess. She's like, you know what? I'm just going to let him have this prank, okay? A couple months go by. She's still living there. One night she's home alone. She's been at home alone for hours. He's been at work. She said she's sitting in the living room and all of a sudden he just walks out from the kitchen. She said she had been in the living room the entire time. He would have had to come in through the living room in order to get into the kitchen. So she had no idea. She freaked out completely. She's like, when did you get home? I didn't even see you come home. How would I have not noticed you? And he says, I told you that I can do this. She's like, you're really freaking me out. I really need to know what is going on with you. And he says, okay, I just won't do it again in front of you. She was very shaken by it, but he did not offer any other explanation besides, I can do this at will. Fast forward a little bit. She has moved out into her own place, okay? She is at home one day. She's scrolling social media. She's not with him. And she sees that he has posted on his social media photos and videos of him in a different country. She didn't want me to say where because she was worried about him seeing this. So she texts him and she's like, who are you trying to fool that you're in this other country? Because she knew that he was not in another country. Knew that he had never been to this other country before, and he texted her and he just laughed it off. This happens again, and now he's in a major city in the US, and again she knew that he was not in this major city, but he's posting photos and videos of himself there. So she texts him again. She's like, why are you posting pictures and videos of yourself in this city when I know you're not there? Like, you're in our city. And he texts her back and he says, don't you remember when I told you that I can go anywhere at any time at will? She's like, okay, well, I think that you're using AI, or I think you're using something to fool people. I don't really think that you're there. And he says, no, I'll prove it to you. And she said, how are you going to prove it to me? And he says, we'll pick an event and I will go there. That's happening in this city tonight. And she's like, no, come over right now. He's like, I'm not there. I'm in this city. She's like, why is this man lying to me? So she says, okay, go to this store, which she didn't want me to mention, but basically it's a store that they don't have in their city. She's like, go to this store, bring me this back. She kind of did it just to humor him because she knew he wasn't there because she had just seen him that morning. The flight would have been too long for him to get to the city by the time that he was posting these photos. He says, no, when I teleport, I can't bring anything back. And she's like, ha, I got you. And she's like, okay, if you can be anywhere at any time, come to my apartment right now. He says, okay, I'll be there shortly. And this is where it gets creepy, okay? So she said her new apartment is on the 12th floor of this building. And she has a balcony that overlooks the city. There's no fire escape, and the only entrance to this building is the main front door, which she said has an inside lock. So she locks the inside lock, and he tells her, if you want me to come, you have to crack open your balcony door. She's like, why do I have to crack open the balcony door? Because there's no way for him to get in there from outside. So she's like, it's not like he's coming in this way. And he says it's because the pressure from his teleportation will crack the glass. Because again, cannot reiterate this enough. There's no other way into her apartment besides this front door. So she says, okay, I'm going to humor you because I don't know what's going on. So she cracks open the balcony door, goes to bed. It's like 2 a.m. 7 a.m, she wakes up to a text from him, and it's a video of him in her house. She said he did not have a key, and he was in the same clothes that he was wearing in the photos of him in this other city. Video was sent around 3 a.m, and it's him in her apartment, and the door is locked behind him. It's a brand new white light that she had just put in that day, so she knew the video was taken that night because prior to that she had like a yellow light. The throw blanket was on the couch that she had used prior to going to bed, and in the video he is seen walking to her bedroom. She can see herself. He's whispering to the camera. He's saying, baby, I can't wake you. You asked for this. To the camera while she's sleeping in the background, mind you, he's whispering, I'm sorry I didn't bring the stuff that you asked for. I told you I can't bring things when I teleport, but once I go the legitimate way, I can bring you these things back. Tells her the time that it is where they are and the time that it is where he was supposedly in that city. And as he's saying the time, she turns in the bed and he laughs and he says, stop moving, baby. At this point in her message, she said she's a very light sleeper. She would know if someone was in the room with her, but she did not hear anybody in the room with her that night. In the video, he walks over to her, pats her body, pulls her cover up over her body, and walks out of the room. Meanwhile, he looks at the camera one more time and he says, remember, you asked for this. Laughs and ends the video. She calls him right away. She says, I saw the video. What is going on? Because she knew because of some of the details in that video that it had been taken that night. He did not have a key to her place. The place was locked from the inside. There's no way for him to have gotten in. So her mind is blown. And he says, you know, I have some stuff to take care of today, business related, but you can come over to my place. And I'm all done. And so she goes over there. He's back. Everything's normal. She's pressing him for answers because she's clearly freaked out by this. And he just is insistent that he can teleport and that it's very real. And he tells her that if she wants to learn how to do it, she has to raise her vibration. Tells her that she has to be extremely genuine and truthful. He also said that he could do other things, but she didn't go into detail. And she said those are other stories. But she really just sent this because she was like, should I be freaked out? I really want to learn how to do it. It's not enough for me to like leave him. He also told her that he only does it when he needs to because it takes a toll on his energy, and he only does it when he needs to scout a place, whatever that means. Let her know your thoughts. If you have a story you think nobody would believe, I would love to hear it.
The topic of apparently thousands of people sharing the same false memory about being able to breathe underwater as children. Can we talk about people that were able to fly down the stairs? Because apparently thousands of people remember being able to do this as well. And honestly, when I read this story, something clicked in my brain and I was like, I kind of remember that. But this story came from someone named Marlon, and he said that when he was in grade school, he flew down the stairs and there were witnesses. Like the other kids in his class also witnessed this happen. He said he was about 12 years old and he was a pretty athletic kid, and he was always jumping off like the 7th or 8th stair anytime he would go down the stairs. And this one day they're in gym class and they had already changed into their gym clothes. So he was wearing like a t-shirt, a cotton t-shirt, and a pair of sweat cut off gym shorts in their school colors. And he said that they were all in the auditorium, like waiting for the gym teacher to tell them what to do. She's like, we're going to go out to the back field and play a game. So all the kids run to the staircase, and he's the first one at the staircase, and he jumps off the 7th or 8th floor. And he said he'd done this like a million times, like it was like muscle memory at this point. But instead of landing like the hard landing that he normally would, he felt himself float, and the whole thing took maybe 4 or 5 seconds longer than it should have. And there were other kids standing on top of the staircase that witnessed it, like so much that they were even like, oh my God, did you just fly? Like, did you just fly? And he said when he landed, his feet like just gently touched the ground. A lot closer to the door than he should have been. Like he wasn't even exactly at the base of the stairs, and he's like, nothing made sense. Like my brain was racing. All the kids behind him are hooting and hollering, and he turns around and he's looking at them and they're just shocked. They're like, did y'all just see him float? Did y'all just see him float? And he said being 12, he just tried to play it cool, like play it off. Like, yeah, I can do that all the time. But really he was freaking out. That to this day, as an adult, he thinks about that because he feels like he unlocked some kind of special ability for just a split second or a few split seconds. But either way, he said he wasn't wearing any special kind of shoes. He's not an X-Man. It wasn't even open, so a breeze wouldn't explain it, and people witnessed it. Because of his experience, he feels like humans have capabilities or special abilities that they're able to tap into when connected with whatever source. And the reason he's sharing this is because he's actually hoping to connect with someone who has unlocked their abilities. Now, he said you always hear on social media about people who have unlocked, like being able to do telekinesis or communicate telepathically. Those are always just kind of far out there stories, and you're never actually able to connect with the people that can do these things. So that's what he's hoping for here. And he said he wants to figure this out before he dies, because
That it bothers him that something impossible happened to him and he can't explain it. He said Marlon's his real name. He grew up in Evanston, Illinois, and he went to Nichols Middle School, but now he lives in San Diego. So let him know if you have thoughts, if you have any of these abilities, or if you remember anything like this. I'll be sending him this link and he can read the comments. If you have a spooky scary story time, I would love to read it. This guy emailed me and he told me that he knows and has met the angel of death. It's not like a psychic thing. He said that it's not like he can turn it on and off. It's not like he can ask her when so-and-so is going to pass away. It's just every time she's shown up to him in his life, something bad always happens. And he doesn't know why she keeps showing up to him, like why he has this ability. So it started in 2011 with his dad. He had just graduated college. He was on the way to visit his dad. His dad lived in like, I guess, not a great area outside of Detroit. Right before he gets to his dad's house, he stops at this gas station to grab some snacks and drinks. And he said his dad loved the Gardetto's rye chips. He says these snacks are like hit or miss at gas stations. Like not everybody always has them. So he gets his snacks, he gets his drink, he goes to the aisle to find these chips. He's standing there staring at the aisle when this woman walks up next to him. And he said he smelled her before he saw her because she just stunk so bad, like something decaying. So he sees out of the corner of his eye that it's a woman. He said he didn't turn to look at her, but he just knew like from his peripheral vision that it was a woman. She comes and stands right next to him, like not touching him, but he said that the space between them was like basically like a hair's length. Like she was standing directly next to him and she was staring dead ahead of her, like at the chips. So he takes a step away from her because obviously her being so close was uncomfortable and she stunk. But then he sees where she's staring is where the rye chips are. So he looks at her basically to say, excuse me. She turns to look at him and he said her eyes were so dark it almost looked like she had no pupils. Like they were really, really dark brown, like almost black. She had really long waist length jet black hair. He said it looked dirty, like it hadn't been washed. It was matted in some spots. He said he would have put her anywhere between 25 and 35 years old. Like she was pretty, but she was a hard pretty. Her face looked old, not in age, but just that she had lived a hard life. Like she was a hard pretty, if that makes sense. She was wearing like baggy clothes, nothing flashy. He says, excuse me. She takes a step back. He grabs the chips. He's standing in line to buy the chips and then he smells that scent again and he realizes she's standing right behind him. He said he's like not trying to judge her, but he just assumed that she was like an unhoused person because again, it was not a great area and that wasn't uncommon for that area. So he goes over to his dad's house. They hang out for a couple hours. He leaves. That night he gets a call from his older sister because his dad had a massive stroke and was in the hospital. He eventually passed away from that stroke. When this happened and when his father passed, he had no connection in his mind about seeing this woman and then his father passing. And it didn't make sense until later because 2 years after that, he was on a train going to work. He was living about 1,000 miles away from where he grew up in Michigan, so different city. And he said he always took the same train to work and from work. And his stop was one of the last along the route. He usually listened to music and read on his commutes. And one day he's headed home from work. It's not a packed train, but at one stop before he got home, a woman gets on and he sees her out of the corner of his eye. She's got long hair. He doesn't look up. He's engrossed in his book. She comes and sits in the chair directly next to him. He doesn't turn to look at her because he thought that would be rude, but he said it was strange because there were plenty of open seats on that train. But as soon as she sits down, he smells something horrible. It's just the smell of decay, and he doesn't put two and two together. So he kind of turns to look at her, and he recognizes her from somewhere, but he doesn't initially know where he recognizes her from. She's got dark eyes. She just looks kind of dirty, looks kind of hard, but pretty. She's staring straight ahead. He figures he has just seen her on this train before, so he just tries not to smell her. He goes back to reading his book, and then the train comes to a stop, but it's between stations. The conductor of the train service comes over the PA system, and they say that they're going to have a slight delay. The slight delay turns into a very long delay, and eventually squad cars come, ambulances come, and a fire truck comes. And it's eventually revealed, or somebody on the train figures out, that somebody had jumped in front of the train and unalived themselves. Nobody's allowed off the train during this time, but eventually the train starts moving again, and the woman gets up and gets off at the next stop. He didn't see it happen, but obviously he's really sad that night, thinking about how sad that is that somebody felt the need to do that. And right before he falls asleep that night, he has a flash of the woman's face, and he realizes that it's the same woman that he saw at that gas station outside of Detroit years before when his father passed. But like, what's he supposed to do with this information? So he just doesn't do anything. He just kind of forgets. And for 4 years, he doesn't think about this woman until one day he's at a grocery store. He comes out to the parking lot. He loads all his bags into the trunk of his car. He gets in. He puts a key in the ignition. He looks up through the windshield. He sees a black car parked in front of him facing his car. So he looks through the windshield, realizes there's a person in the car, and it's a woman with long dark hair. He recognizes her instantly, and he has this instant gut bad feeling because it's the same woman from the gas station the night his father passed, and it's the same woman from the train the day that the guy jumped in front of the train he was on. She's not looking at him though. She's looking out toward the street, toward the intersection that you would have to pull out of in order to leave the grocery store parking lot. He's staring at her for a second, and he's like, I have a bad feeling that something is going to happen. And he feels like he just can't look away from her. But eventually he pulls out of the parking lot, gets in line basically to turn out onto the street. It's a heavy traffic hour. The car in front of him stalls for a minute trying to turn out, and then eventually pulls out and is immediately T-boned by a big pickup truck. The car is pushed a few yards down the street. He sees the airbags go off. His heart is in his stomach, and he pulls around it and calls 911. He says he has no way of knowing
what happened to that driver, but something in his gut tells him that it did not end well. He says he's aware that he could have looked it up, but he just didn't want to. And over the next 2 years, he saw her twice more. Once before a fire broke out of the office building that he worked next door to, and another time before he saw a man collapse on the street. And he starts becoming obsessed with seeing her and finding out who she is. He scours online forums, can't find anything. And in 2022, he may have gotten the answer that he was looking for. He was in Arizona on a business trip. He said that they had provided him a rental car, and he was driving late from the conference center back to his hotel. The highway was nearly deserted at this hour, and he's driving pretty much alone, and he sees a figure standing on the side of the highway. And he said he knew it was her before he even looked, but there she was, standing just ahead under a streetlight in the distance. So he's like, enough. So he pulls over. He said he left the car running. His hands were shaking as he gripped the wheel. He gets out of the car and he walks up to her. He's like shaking. He's scared, but he's like, who are you and why are you following me? She's staring dead at him. She doesn't say anything, but she turns to look down the road and she just points. He turns his head to look in the direction where she's pointing. When he turns back, she's gone. He thinks he's going absolutely insane at this point. He's like, there's no way I just saw a ghost. Standing on the side of the road, literally just trying to figure out if he's actually going crazy. And then in the distance, he sees a pair of headlights that are barreling toward him. The headlights are barreling toward him at an alarming speed, and right before it smashes into the rental car, he dives out of the way and over the median into like the desert. His car was absolutely demolished, took all of the impact, and he had a few scratches from jumping over the median, but nothing serious. As he was laying there, that she had not come to take him, but to warn him, but he has no idea why. He said since that night in 2022, he has not seen her, but he thinks of her often because he's not sure if she's a savior or someone who brings doom with her. He knows that he'll see her again and that he can't shake the feeling that one day she will be there to take him. But he said he wanted to share his story anonymously because he doesn't want anyone that he knows to think that he's crazy, because he knows that this is real and that it's something that he's absolutely experienced. But he said he wanted to share his experience because he was curious if anyone listening has had a similar experience of seeing this woman or knows who she is. And if not, he said maybe somebody knows why he has this ability to see her when other people don't.
After hearing all those stories, what do you think? Do you think that humans are more supernatural than we're led to believe? I kind of do. What if the impossible is just the unfamiliar? What if we don't grow out of these abilities? What if we're trained out of them? Maybe it's just human potential before we're told to stop believing in it. Let me know if you want a part 2 to this, because this rabbit hole goes much, much deeper. Thank you all so much for being here. I appreciate you more than you know. Thank you especially to my Patreons and subscribers. You guys make this possible and allow me to bring you more and more Spooky Scary Story Times. I appreciate you. I'll see you guys next time.